Hey y'all, welcome back to the Full Circle Moments series. I'm your host, Tanisha Miss T. Morrison, owner and visionary of the Empower Her Experience, a platform to help BIPOC women on their personal and professional journeys to greatness. During the Full Circle Moments series, I'll be connecting with women across the world, sharing their incredible stories, real, raw, and unscripted. Our second episode of the series features Miss Antoinette E. Rains. She is a USAF veteran who was diagnosed in October 2017 with severe PTSD and C-PTSD due to MST, or military sexual trauma, and other military work-related traumas. Secrets that she held onto and suppressed for over 30 years until she could no longer live in her personal prison. After her diagnosis, she underwent 2 years of intense weekly therapy sessions through the Veterans Administration. During the time in therapy, Antoinette began to write to get her thoughts and feelings out as part of the therapy exercises of her CPT, cognitive processing therapy. It became very therapeutic for her as she progressed in therapy and shared more. She found her healing accelerate. Antoinette then began to be connected with other female veterans who had experienced MST through their repeated and unwanted sexual harassment, sexual assault, or rape. She was sickened by what she learned was a pervasive pattern and culture within the U.S. military branches, and also learned that family and friends didn't understand PTSD, C-PTSD, or what MST was, how it could happen, or how to help their loved ones cope. Thus, becoming the reclamation was birth. Throughout her therapy, reconnecting with military active duty and veteran women, Antoinette found the strength and courage to speak her truth on her road to personal healing and growth, and many other active duty and veteran women's through regarding military sexual trauma as well as other military work related traumas. Antoinette, through this process, has chosen to reclaim her life and go from victim to warrior, conqueror, and ultimately victor. She is also the best-selling author of Chapter 11, From Homeless to Homeowner, in the anthology book Full Circle Moments, When God Shows You Before He Shows You. She is a mother of four amazing adults, a Black woman in tech, and is a God-fearing woman who has a heart for God's people. She loves deeply and genuinely. She hails from and lives in Southern California and loves to travel, cook, bake, sew, and do DIY projects. She is truly a Proverbs 31 woman. God has given her great favor and grace throughout her life, and she increases in wisdom daily. Welcome, Antoinette.
Hey, Tanisha, I appreciate you having me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What an amazing bio. It is very
Thank you.
telling of so much of what you have been through, the transparency that you shared in that, and everything that God has done for you and has been able to use you as a vessel on this journey of your life as well. So I just want to first commend you, for sharing your story in your first book, because I know that a lot of individuals who work in government spaces, government industries, and different positions, they're more so silent and remain silent.
Hmm.
But after so long, you decided to say no longer being silent. So I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So I want to start there. Can you share about the moment you knew it was time to write your first book, where you knew I was no longer going to be silent? What was going on with you or around you to know it was time?
Yeah, so 33 years is a long time to hold on to something. I
Yeah,
had been married, divorced, have four adult children, and never said anything. But after so long, your body won't allow you to
yeah,
continue. Right. So I had gotten a job. And literally, I live in Southern California, and this job was in Monterey, California in 2017.
mhm,
And I remember telling God, if you're sending me there, that's where I'll go. Right. But the thing about it, it was on a military installation on a base
Oh,
um, of a school called DLI. DLI is where all branches of our military, the U.S. military, some foreign also, come to learn their languages. If they're going to be a
okay.
linguist for our country, or if they're going to be in a job that they need other language skills.
Mhm.
So, excuse me. So I was like, okay, you can be there as short as 6 weeks or up to 3 years, depending on the language that you need, like interpreters or whatever, right?
Okay.
So I decided, okay, I'll go. I hadn't really been on a military base since getting out of the Air Force. So I
Wow.
was super nervous, right? Super nervous. Hadn't discussed anything with anyone. And I would go every Tuesday to process new people to the base. It was called JSIB, Joint Services in Processing Briefing. And my job was to in process like 400 members every week for the tech
Ooh.
part.
Mhm.
Well, there was a guy that the hall that we did it in, he kind of managed that, he worked on the base, and he saw some behaviors in me. And so one day he said, hey, he said, you got PTSD? He was a veteran also. I was like, no. And I like had an attitude about it. I was like, no. And he said, yes, you do. I was like, no, I don't. And so I argued with him, and he was like, you need to go to the VA because I'm telling you right now, I see how you interact at times. I see how you react. I see how, depending on what someone says or does, you're triggered. And yes, you do. And you need to go get your diagnosis. I was like, no, I didn't retire. I can't go to the VA and all this. And he was like, you need to go. I
Yeah.
was like, whatever, right? This went on for 3 weeks. And on the
Wow.
third week, because he kept saying to me, did you go? Did you call? Did you go? And I was like, no, can't, no, right? So by the third week, he asked me, and I literally lost it. I snapped on him.
I
And
could imagine pressing
he
the
was
button.
like, see, you don't even get it. That's a trigger. He
Yeah.
said, I don't know, other than me just saying, did you go? Something is really triggering you. You need to go. He said, I tell you what. He said, you got till this time next week to go and make an appointment, or I am going to call and report it that
Wow.
they need to do. And I was like, like, how dare you type thing or
Yeah.
whatever, right? But he knew because he had it and he saw some things that I didn't. So I went on and made the appointment so that by the next week he wouldn't, have to call or whatever. Um, and because there's different hotlines that you can call for
Okay.
veterans, right? Or if you're a veteran and report another veteran having some issues or maybe suicidal, and I wasn't
Mhm.
suicidal, but he knew, right? And there is a PTSD hotline. So he was like, okay. So I went on and called, and they made an appointment for me. And I went into this appointment, and it happened to be a psychiatrist who, well, psychologist, I think, but a black doctor. And he was
Okay.
a male. But because I was being diagnosed with the PTSD and all of that, the whole time we were in the office together, he sat across from me, not
Mhm.
like super close, and he kept the door open. And I
Wow.
thought that was
Okay.
really odd, right?
Mhm.
But they deal with veterans every day, and especially women. So as he starts asking me questions, literally a river of tears and emotions that I've been holding on to for 33 years comes out, and I have a full on panic anxiety attack in that
Wow.
office, in that exam room. And I'm talking to him, and he had like another doctor come in who's a pharmacist, a
Mhm.
psychiatrist, pharmacist, or whatever. They prescribed me some Prozac. Well, that didn't work because I broke out in like this crazy
Oh
rash with
no.
days. Yeah, and I was itching all over and everything. So they were like, okay, we'll take you off of that because you're allergic. But usually with veterans, when they get diagnosed like that, they will send them out. It's called community care, and they make an
Mhm.
appointment within 30 days and they see you. And he was like, I can't do that to you. You have severe PTSD and C-PTSD. I was like, well, what the
What
heck
is?
is that? Right?
Yes.
And they were like, complex PTSD because you had military sexual trauma happen to you. You were sexually assaulted, and then told, like, you better not ever say anything. It's a whole entire, people higher in rank and all of
Yeah.
it's, yeah. And so they said, you've been dealing with this internally and you can't. You need to get therapy. You need to, and the thing about the therapy is like they re-walk you through it, right?
Yes.
So they did not let me leave that day. They scheduled an hour later for my first therapy session.
Wow, that was a lot of intensity to go back and have to relive it through the first set. That was a lot. I could just imagine
From
what you were
from
going
just
through.
saying it, yeah, from just saying and him asking me and me telling him to go into all this crazy panic
Mm-hmm.
attack, anxiety, all of this, and then an hour later meeting with my very first therapist.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was pretty intense that day.
definitely, definitely. So, I'm not sure if the therapist that you were speaking of is Dr. Julie Demet.
Dimit,
Demet.
no, it wasn't. Actually, this one kind of does like a triage type, you know,
Okay.
as a therapist and to assess you, see where you are and all of that, and what type of therapy you need.
Okay.
So I met with her, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks, but they were
Okay.
weekly sessions, and I would have to go to the VA and sit with her. And then I got on the schedule for Dr. Julie, who had me basically for like the rest of my time, uh,
Okay.
2 years.
Okay.
And Dr. Julie was amazing. Love, love,
Yeah.
loved her.
Yeah.
She walked
It's
me through a lot of this.
it sounds like you had two angels in disguise thus far. And although I know the first angel in disguise that I'm deeming these people angels angels in disguise, um, was the your coworker who insisted
Yeah,
and pushed
yeah,
and pricked and pushed and pricked until he said, I'm not going to give up on you.
yeah,
Although you don't want to, because we all go through that denial phase,
yep,
or our egos are intact, our pride's intact, and all of those different things. But it sounds like he was the first, angel in disguise that said, I don't care what you say. I don't care how you're going to come at me or whatnot, but we're going to get you into those doors. And then reading your book, Dr. Julie, it sounds like, amongst other ones along the way, was definitely another angel in disguise. And you all spoke about stuck points, is what she
hmm
called them.
hmm
Um, can you share what are stuck points and which stuck points you struggle with the most and why?
yeah. Stuck points for me were it's literally just that where you get stuck and you can't
Hmm.
move forward, right? And you can't get beyond something. So for me, and this may sound crazy, but for those 33 years, I would have a dream pretty much every night between 1:30 and 3:30. First, they started out like full panic attacks, and then other times I'd just wake up or, oh, gotta go to the bathroom.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to do anything. But this dream was, or nightmare, no matter where I was, I could be out shopping, I could be having lunch or dinner with someone, I could be wherever. And out of nowhere, this huge, it was probably like a 200-foot wall of water, like a wave, like you see in the movies, right?
Hmm.
Would just come and swallow me up and take
Wow.
me away, right? And so I didn't know what that was. And Dr. Julie told me, yeah, that's a stuck point for you because that's anxiety and you having all this inside and not knowing how to talk about it and get it out. Because when I was in the military, I was told you better not ever say anything. I was told
Mm.
suck it up, buttercup, which I hate that phrase.
Wow.
I was told we'll go. The military is really its own world. And you
Hmm.
could be at one base and being sent to another one. They were like, oh, well, we'll tell. Because I was in California and being stationed in Japan. And they were like, oh, we'll
Wow.
tell over there so that you won't say anything. It's this whole mind thing, right?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And so I was stuck there. I was married, like I said, divorced, never told my ex husband, never told my parents, never told my
Wow.
children, never told anyone.
Wow.
And a few years ago, my very first roommate and I reconnected
Hmm.
because after we were here in California, then I went to Japan and she go to Germany or wherever she went, but we both went to different bases overseas and we reconnected probably 5 years ago. And same thing happened to her. She was raped though.
Oh my gosh.
And we talked about it and we cried and we've gotten together a couple times and she went through the therapy too. And so other stuck points were like, I don't like men telling me something and silencing my voice, right? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
what happened to me when I was
Yeah.
assaulted. And it was five of them. And no matter what, me kicking and screaming and saying, no, don't do this, they weren't listening. So, um, things that would trigger me, right? And I didn't even realize because I was just stuck and I could not get forward because I did not know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to deal with it and I couldn't speak about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what do you feel kept you from even telling these intricate details to your husband, the person that you married and, you know, vow to, just for them to know all of you? Like what do you feel kept that wall up between the two of you for him
Uh,
not to know these intricate details?
well, because he was also Air Force. And
Oh,
so when we
wow.
first got
Okay.
together, good, right? It was like, like how would I tell? And I
Mm,
never did. And I don't know if my kids have shared it with their dad, but we're divorced. He's remarried. I've never had a conversation with him about it.
wow.
Because I just got the diagnosis in 2017. And because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't talk about it, it's like even after you're married, what do you say? Right. And
Yeah.
then you're afraid of how will they look at me and they'll think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, did you do this? And because you know the way society is and your
Yeah.
brain works. And so I never did. And you know what's crazy though? When I was 6 hours away up in Monterey, Central California. So when I came home that weekend, I went over to my parents' house and I told my mother before I told my dad because I'm just like my
Okay.
dad. He was in the Air Force. He was stationed at the base where I was, where this happened. And I couldn't think about telling him, right?
Yeah.
But after I had been in therapy and I told my mother, she was like, oh my gosh, no wonder. She started putting dots, connecting
Mm-hmm.
the dots
Mm-hmm.
to past behaviors. She said, no wonder, like, there are times where you would just snap and go off and no matter what we said, even if it wasn't anything, we couldn't figure out what was wrong with you,
Yeah.
right? But it was a secret that I was having to live with and didn't know how to be able
Wow.
to walk through it. And I couldn't just say to somebody, right? Because especially your family and your friends,
Yeah.
you don't want to have to share that and
Mm-hmm.
then wonder about, well, what do they think about me
Yeah.
and your parents? And it's like, you know, I don't want to be a disappointment to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so all those things are in your head
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily want to have to share that, right? So first you're told you better not. And then after so many years, it's like, well, you have shame and you have guilt. And until you go through therapy, you don't realize that no, there's no shame on you because it wasn't your fault.
None.
You shouldn't
Yeah.
feel guilt. You shouldn't feel this way. And it's okay to tell your truth because you could help somebody else
Yeah.
with what you've been through, right?
Yeah. Whew. Again, I'm
And you don't think that
I'm
stuff like
thankful.
this would happen to when you're serving your country, right?
Yeah.
And here I've been out all these years, and tomorrow's Veterans Day. Um, and there's
What?
times
Yeah.
where it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm super thankful. It was a pleasure to serve, but then there's this nasty part, this ugly part, that you still have to reconcile with. That's why my book is titled Becoming Me, the Reclamation, because I really had to become the person I am today after releasing all that stuff that I held on to for all that time.
Yes. I'm 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 so just grateful that you've been able to come to the other side of this and, be it still working through it or not, um, being able to tell your story with pride, you know, um, letting go of shame, letting go
Yeah.
of, judgment. And I hope, I don't know the story behind, when your family have learned about what you were dealing with. I'm hoping that, they have given you grace.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
what is something that you would tell that woman or that male, um, that's still serving, that's been discharged honorably, that's, fulfilled their duty, um, that are contemplating being able to share their story.
I say tell it and tell the truth because it's what happened to you. It's not something you invited. It's not something, that you did to make someone do this. That's their them being sick, perverse or whatever. But tell it. And I've told this to other women who were dealing with the same thing. I have this secret I couldn't tell anybody. I have a friend that's a male that was in the Air Force, went to the same high school as me. He's a few years younger, but I just met him like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something. And he called me recently, like, "Hey, T." I was like, "What's up?" And he was like, he told me his story.
Wow.
And he was a man that had military sexual trauma. And I didn't ask him for details because
Hmm.
that's very personal. I didn't ask if he was assaulted or raped or anything. And for a man, I think the shame is way bigger than for a woman.
Yes, definitely.
Um, and so whether it's done by men or a woman or whatever, but I guided him how to go to the VA and how to report it because also if it happened to you and things were in your medical records from back then and it can verify some things, then you will get the MST disability
Okay.
um, by the Veterans Administration. So I guided him through that process because I went through it
Yeah.
and told him, hey, do this, and all this kind of stuff. So he's in that process now. But we talked about it, and I said, you don't. It wasn't you, and you don't have a reason to be shamed. You feel shame or feel like you have all this guilt, but go to your therapy. Go get the therapy and talk about it because if you don't, you're going to be stuck too. There's just
Yeah.
certain things that you won't ever be able to get beyond. I was terrible with finances
Hmm.
because I needed to feel good about myself. And so I would shop. I would buy nice clothes, nice this, nice that. I had to have a nice car, whatever, because I had this whole mask and this thing on the outside
Hmm.
because I was hiding the
Yeah.
junk and the ugly on the inside, right?
Yeah.
And that's a stuck point because you can't go through this life with bad finances, right?
Right.
You're not gonna have a home, you're not gonna have, or I had, I've lost jobs, I had cards repoed, all this because I wasn't managing my money because
Hmm.
I needed to have all this stuff that made me feel better. And so, yeah, I
So,
still shop a lot, but I'm doing much, much, much better. But I didn't realize that that was one of the issues until I went through my therapy.
yeah, we sometimes, fill one void with things,
Another,
tangible
exactly.
things,
Yep.
that don't end up, helping us heal, but it makes us feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you just spoke about a gentleman that shared his story, and in your chapter 3, which is the military sexual trauma chapter, you you give voice to a few other women and one gentleman about their
Mm-hmm.
stories and their experiences. What was that like? Even being able to um, reach out to them, um, encourage them, or convince them to tell the story, have it as a part of this book.
Um, this may sound really weird, but it helped in the healing for myself and them, right?
Okay.
Because when you really realize that this is pervasive and you're not alone and
Mm-hmm.
there is community with some other people, it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then when you compare your stories that, this wasn't anything I invited. I wasn't off duty in Daisy Duke shorts, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't in some skimpy, I was literally on duty in my uniform and I was in law enforcement when they did this to me. Same with, my colleague my girlfriend who was my first roommate and how her and another sergeant, higher in rank than her, had to go TDY, which is temporary duty.
Mm-hmm.
And they had separate hotel rooms and everything. And he was like, okay, well, you still do everything together. But he had at their base in Korea where they're stationed at the time, had kept trying to come under and all this. And she was like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not interested in all this. So after they went to dinner, he walked her back, like, hey, I want to make sure you get back to your room safe or whatever. So when she put her key in the door, he forced his way in and he raped her.
Wow. Oh
Right.
my gosh.
And so, yeah. So that, and she kept it a secret a long time too. You know what I mean? Because you feel guilty, like, well, was there something I could have done different or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And talking to others, and then we've seen on the news in the past few years Vanessa Gilliam, I think, right, who was Army, and there was another Black young lady during Desert Storm, I believe, but who was Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, she was raped, and then they killed these young ladies because it's like, well,
So
I gotta
disheartening.
cover. Right. Because then, well, it used to be also with MST, if when you were in, if you told about it, like you reported it, instead of arresting that person, maybe putting them out or whatever, they put the women out and gave
Yeah.
them 100%
Oh my
disability
gosh.
discharge. I don't want to be discharged. I'm serving.
Yeah.
I want you to do something to this
About the
idiot that
yeah.
did this to me, right? But instead, they would do 100% medical disability discharge and give the women a honorable discharge, but kick them out. It's like, so that's why so many have never said anything, because you had a friend that this happened to and they put her out. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, no, can I serve and do what I'm doing because I love it, and
Without
not
having
have this
to. Yeah.
happen or have to worry about, being put out or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, so listening to others and asking them, can I put your story in the book? And some said yes with my name, others were like, just don't use my real name. But
Mm-hmm.
it helped, it gave them voice, and it helped in the healing because there's that community and you're able to say, hey, and let's stay connected, and let's make sure that one another are okay or whatever. It helped a lot
Yeah.
in the healing, and still
Yeah.
does, because there are days where you might have a trigger, right? um I remember one day I had to call the VA, and I was in the grocery store, and the guy on the other end of the phone, it was a man, and he would not listen to me for anything, and he kept talking over me and cutting me off. If you cut me off and talk over me, that's a huge trigger, because that's what these five did to me when they
Mm-hmm.
decided they were going to rape me or whatever, right? Sexually assault me. And I literally, in the grocery store on the phone, screaming at the top of my lungs at this guy at the VA on the other end, and wound up literally dropping to the ground, broken down, crying
Wow.
in a full panic attack, couldn't breathe. And a couple came on the aisle like, are you okay? Are you okay? But that's the kind of stuff that, as I was going through therapy, I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how to take a breath and say, okay, this is where you are. Breathe
Mm-hmm.
through it. You are not there, and this is not happening to you again, right?
Yes.
Where now I can do that if I feel triggered, or I know how to get away from people before I snap, right? And just say, you know what, I need some space or some time or whatever. Which I learned all that in therapy. But yeah, you don't know when something is going to happen that's going to trigger you and when you're going to go off. And so if you have these secrets and you never go to therapy, you're doing a disservice to yourself
Disservice.
and your
Right.
family.
Right.
Right.
Therapy is such an amazing service that is underused. Um,
Absolutely.
it's definitely underused, and I encourage, as you can hear, Antoinette saying it's definitely necessary for you to begin your healing journey. And it does only us as individuals a disservice to continue to go through life unhealed. I want to talk about, in closing out the, your discussion of your first book, I want to talk about your Becoming Me graphic, and it's of the swans. And I was so intrigued by the representation of the black, the gray, the white. Can you share a little bit about that illustration?
Yeah. Oof. Let me see if I can get through it without crying too much.
And
So,
pour it out,
yeah.
and that's what I love about this segment. I love for everyone to be transparent, unscripted. We don't know questions going in. I don't send them out. I really
Mhm.
want to have those people that are tuning in to hear more about you, those people who don't even know you, but need to know you and need to hear you and need to see how you have been transparent and how you even pulled in other people to be
Mhm.
transparent and what that does for your journey. So share a little bit about
Yeah.
the swans the best way you can.
Yeah. So for me, the black swan represented how I felt about myself. I felt dirty. I felt
Wow.
ugly. I felt like, you know, not worthy. Um, the gray swan was in the middle as I was going on this journey. And I felt like I was getting all this stuff out, all this
Mhm.
ugliness, all the dirtiness. And once I realized going from black to gray to white, which, represents pure or clean or whatever,
Mhm.
that even in the process of being in the middle in that gray, the ugliness, the dirtiness, all that, that I felt I really wasn't.
Yeah.
It was other people's ugliness that I accepted, that I
Mhm.
carried
Mhm.
for many years and should not have had to carry, but I did. And so now, I feel like you think about when you look on a lake and you see a white swan, people are awestruck. They're like, oh my God, that is
Yes.
so beautiful, right?
Mhm.
But if you ever see a black swan, because black swans are extremely rare, gray swans are in the infancy stage, right?
Mhm.
Black swans are rare, they're unique, they are a diamond in the rough, and they are extremely beautiful. So
Yes.
for me, what I thought was ugly and dirty and all that, and that I had to get clean, and yes, white is beautiful, but I look at myself now as both, right?
Mhm.
Somebody that has gone through and cleaned out all the gunk and all the heaviness and the ugly that I was carrying that was from someone else. But I know that I'm a diamond in the rough. I know that I'm beautiful inside and out because of what I've gone through. And I'm okay with even being a black swan because I
Yes.
look at it now so differently, right? Before it was the ugly and I had to get,
Mhm.
the gray to in between and then the white clean. But even today, I'm all right, even if I am the diamond in the rough black swan, because I know in all of that it was a true transformation for me and that it's what made me who I am today, and the beautiful, kind, loving, generous person that I am today is because of all of that, right? Going through that transformation.
I love that illustration. And I love the meaning behind it. And I think that so
Mhm.
many people who pick up this book, your first book, The Becoming Me, will uh, if they allow themselves to really really be
Yeah,
transformed. And you are a beautiful soul. I haven't known you that long, but
thank you.
just knowing your story and knowing who you are because of your story, such an amazing, beautiful soul.
Thank you.
So I want to get into the second book, Full Circle
Mm-hmm.
Moments, when God
Mm-hmm.
shows you before he shows you. So congratulations on becoming best-selling author through that project. And your
Thank you. With
captivating
me,
title.
with your team
Yes, of
members. Yep.
course, with me, I'm a part of it as well.
Great.
And we have used our voices and we appreciate everyone who has supported this project. So you're chapter 11, from homeless to homeowner, which is
Mm-hmm.
already a captivating title. Of course, if anyone just passes by and sees that title, of course you're going to want to pick up this book. Um, when I read the title, I thought it was just very strong, very commendable. Can you talk about the resilience during your valley season of the journey and how it played a role?
Yeah, definitely. It was a tough time. It was about 10 years of a
Hmm.
valley season. And with God, you don't know how long a valley's going to be. You don't know how
Yeah,
long you'll be on a hill, right? So
right.
we have ups and downs or whatever. But, in trusting God, you learn resilience, right? In
Hmm.
in being resilient, you grow and you go from
Yes.
level to level, faith to faith. Your faith increases. And so it was tough. I had gone through a divorce. Um, Wound up losing like the place I was in. My vehicle had been repoed. Just a tough time. Lost a job after 15 years. And it was tough. And I was trying to raise four kids and had, two little dogs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't getting along with my parents at the time either. That was stubborn. That was immaturity. We grow and we learn. But wound up being homeless. And my younger two were 14 and 13 or 11. I think, how many years apart are they? Two. So probably like 11 and 13, somewhere around there. I forgot, but I'm sure it's in my Becoming Me book. But 2010, and was living at an extended stay hotel, and had like two cars at the time, and one of them got stolen out of the parking lot one night. It was gone literally for 3 weeks. But even in that, I didn't lose my faith.
Yes.
And um, I got mad, went in the bathroom, closed myself in, and prayed and fussed at the devil and told him he didn't have the authority to take nothing from me. It would be my kids one day, and he had to give it back. And literally, like, my pastor preached one Sunday at church, and I went home. Monday, we went to work, came home, and in the back of the hotel was like a grass area. You could take your dogs or sit out in a basketball court. And that's where I would always walk. And I walked back there with my dogs that night, and my car was there. Backed into a
Wow.
parking spot, crooked, partly up on a curb, but the car that had been stolen. This was 3 weeks after.
Wow.
And I was like, wait a minute. So I ran back to the hotel, to the room, got my keys to open it. I asked people, did y'all see anybody bring this? They were playing basketball. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's here when we got here. So sometime during the day, I guess, or whatever, but God had given me back and restored to me what was mine and made the enemy give it back. And
Wow.
those are the kinds of stories when I say I've had favor and grace on my life, and
Mm-hmm.
the kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things, right, that God has done in my life and continues to do. I've lost jobs, and every time I've lost a job, He gives me one that's like bananas, benefits, money, everything better,
Yes.
right? I'm in a season right now. The job that I've had for the last 5.5 years, that was crazy money. I just
Mm-hmm.
got laid off on. But I'm not concerned or worried, because I know if God did it before,
He'll
He's
do it
going to do
again.
it, and
Yeah.
He's going to do something that is going to blow my mind, whether
Yes.
it's I'm going to have a job or whether He moves me in another area, business wise or writing or whatever. I don't know. But one thing I've told God is, you're responsible for me. You are Jehovah Jireh, the Lord God, my provider. So you're responsible to provide for me. And so I'm not
Yes.
stressed out or worried. Um,
That's some
and
very
during
strong
that
faith
season,
there.
thank you. But the things I've been through in my life, He has given it to me. And I know this is just going to take me somewhere else, faith wise.
Yes.
And so during those 10 years, I went from being homeless to, in 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, to God bless me with the house that I'm living in, to purchase my own home. I had never used my VA before, and used that, literally no money out of pocket for down
Wow.
payment, only my closing costs. I don't have PMI, all this stuff, and very nice neighborhood. And God
Mm-hmm.
blessed me beyond what I thought He could do. In that chapter, I give different scenarios or stories of things like with a vehicle and in this house, so people can understand when you really trust God and you are resilient in Him, then yeah, He'll blow your mind. And anything you've lost, if you're walking with Him, He's going to restore and give you back so much more than even what the enemy thought he stole from you.
You have a line in the book that says, I have learned that when I am specific and detailed in my prayers, God shows out on my behalf. And when you all read the chapter in the book, you'll see exactly what she's talking about, her convertible, her house, you know, the car that was stolen being brought back with everything that was in it. All of those things were in it when they returned it. And just all of these different blessings that continue to come after what I call just those trip up moments, where you kind of stumble on something and then you kind of get yourself back up, try to see who was looking, if anybody saw you or whatnot, and but you continue to just dust yourself off and take those strides. And in reading your chapter, it seems like during those trip up moments, you said, but God, you know, and
Yeah,
I
always,
always, always throughout your story,
always.
throughout your
And the trip
chapter.
ups are, yeah, the trip ups are either a test to
Mhm.
see where you are with your faith, or the enemy coming for you. But at the end of the day, just like in the book of Job, the enemy can't bring nothing to you unless he goes and asks God for permission. And so if
Permission.
God says yes, then he knows that you're going to do what you need to do, and that you have enough faith and you have enough trust in him, right? To just like the mustard seed, mountain
Mm-hmm.
be moved, right?
Yes.
And so for me, like even now, people are like, oh my God, you are just, I'm like, look, baby, I have peace. God says he will give you peace that surpasses all understanding. I have a mortgage. He's responsible to pay for my mortgage. He's responsible to provide however that's going to be. And so, why am I stressing? Why am I worried? Why am I concerned? I shouldn't be. If I truly put my life in his hands and trust him to be the God that I know he is, he's done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And those are some examples in my
Mm-hmm.
chapter. What? I think he's not going to come through for me again.
It's the
There's
conviction for
no
me.
reason ever. Yeah, there's no reason ever for me to wonder, because he has proven himself truly over and over to me. And so I'm like, all right, daddy, let's go.
Yeah.
You know if I'm
I so
ready.
love it, Antoinette. I so love it. We had our book signing not too long ago, and that same conviction, that same faith, it's consistent. You're
Yeah,
consistently and intentionally, your faith is just there. So
yeah,
I take my hat off to you because not all of us in
absolutely.
the book have gotten to where you are in standing in and on our faith with God. So I definitely commend you for that. You
And it's
open
through trial. Right?
trials,
It's through
trials and
trial
tribulations.
and
Yeah.
perseverance, right? And the resiliency that comes out of it, it's because of, like I said, what I've been through and what God has done for me. I can go back now and say, oh yeah, I wasn't in this exact place before, but these are the examples that you have shown me, how you have never failed me, how you have always been faithful, God, and I thank you for that. And so if you did it then, you're gonna do it again.
Yeah.
And so why would I be worried? Why would I be stressed? Why would I be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's so intentional about us. He's intentional about the trials that he allows us to go through
Hmm.
so that we can get to that next place in our faith.
Yeah. And I thank you. I think I can speak on my behalf as well as probably all of the authors. In the chapter, we ended the book with your chapter. But I also feel like your chapters and just me knowing you and hearing your story, in person, is probably the most impactful for me on um the faith, restoring faith for me, restoring faith.
Amen.
And like you said, using those examples, like look at our lifeline and look at the trials, the tests, the testimonies that we've
Yep.
had, being able
Yep.
to say, like you said, you've done it before,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
standing in firmness that he'll do it again. So
Absolutely.
I just put my hands up and say I'm thankful. Like literally, I'm thankful
Amen.
for you and your journey because it definitely, while I haven't experienced all of what you have went through, it definitely has an impact on my life. So I appreciate you
Okay.
for um just opening up and being able to share your journey.
Thank you. And you know what? I think that if we speak out, because the enemy doesn't want us to speak, right?
Hmm.
You never know who is there or who is going through a trial that feels like they're faithless, right? And
Right.
if they happen to hear you or see your conviction or hear that, well, dang, she done been through some
Hmm.
stuff, right? And look where she is today.
Yeah.
And then when they I had the opportunity to ask you, well, how did you get there? And you say, but God, and this is what I
Mm-hmm.
had to do. And yes, it wasn't always easy. Yes, I cried. Yes, but he says he'll bottle our tears up, right? Um, and so if we stand on his word, if we know that he's done it before, and then we say, God, you know what? This is what your word says about my life. You know the plans you have for my life.
Yeah.
They are to bring me to an expected end. They are to prosper me, right? If we truly believe that and not just reading it like it's just whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we really um, inhale that, ingest his word and chew it up and don't spit it out, but let it
Mm-hmm.
settle in our hearts and in our minds, then the next time we go through something, we'll be like, oh, I got this, right? Because my Father in heaven has me, because, God has allowed me to go through this and took me through so much before that I know, even if this is a test, that I have the victory, that I win in the end.
Yes, yes. And I think, like you said, with the ingesting it, dissecting the word, actually believing the word, actually understanding the word, it's vital
Yes,
for your walk. So I definitely, you've thrown so many different nuggets, I'll call them, with scripture that I'm like, look, I got to get to the replay and go look up this, and this and this and this because yeah, there's some work that we all must do when it comes to our
all of us.
faith, all of us.
Yeah, all of
So
us,
you
always.
open and close your chapter with a quote by Susan David that
Hmm.
reads, "Discomfort is the price for admission to a meaningful life." How has this quote
Hmm.
resonated with you, and what is the intention behind it for your readers?
Yeah. So discomfort being the price of admission for a meaningful life. We all want to have impact. We all want to walk in our purpose. We all want to have a legacy, right? That we had something that was meaningful in our life, or we were meaningful to someone else. Well, I've learned for me, it hasn't come by being comfortable. It's
Mm,
come by getting outside of my comfort zone,
yeah,
whether it was being pushed out of my comfort zone because I was laid off or fired or lost a house or lost a car or whatever, right? Those things, when we're on a comfortable cush job with benefits and good
mm-hmm,
pay, when we got the car we want, when we have the house we want, when we have the things that we think are, oh, life is great, we're comfortable.
yeah,
Yeah. And so a lot of times we don't move how we are supposed to, and what God has intended for us. And then he will allow things to happen. So we are either pushed out or come out of our
yes,
comfort zone. And that's when you find the meaning, right? You be like, oh, okay, hold up. Oh, I was supposed to share this with someone. Oh, I was supposed to do this. Oh, I was supposed to do that. So that's why that quote means so much to me. Uh-oh.
oh,
Yeah, so again, that's just, when we have things that seem to be going right, we have a car we want, we have, family is happy, husband, wife, partner, whatever, kids are doing good, um, job, all of that, we get comfortable. And
yeah,
sometimes we don't move how we're supposed to. We don't flow how we're supposed to. We're not walking in the purpose for that season. And when something happens, like a layoff, or you get fired, or you lose a house, or you lose a car, or whatever, then you're no longer comfortable. But God allows it so that you can get outside of that comfort zone.
mm-hmm,
And that to me has been when I have found so much meaning in my life. So that's why that quote resonates so much with me. And I put it at the beginning and the end of the chapter because I do want people to push themselves to get outside of their comfort zone to see what it is that God has for them or desires for them to do.
yes. And there's so much on the other side of our comfort zone, as we know,
Mm-hmm.
or as we'll learn. So I appreciate that. What is next for you professionally? If there's a philanthropic endeavor, because I know you've been working with, allow or helping people share their stories or being open to them using you as a vessel in some sort. But what's next for you?
You know what? I don't know. And I don't say that like I haven't been thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a space right now because, like I said, I was just recently, lost my job. Um, I'm just like, Lord, what?
Yeah.
Right? Who am I supposed to talk to?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do so that He's glorified? Right?
Yes.
That's like what's important for me right now. I do have like irons in the fire. Me and a couple friends of mine are uh, beginning a consulting business, a IT consulting business.
Okay.
We're trying to get some contracts, some government contracts, whether they're federal, state, local, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I'm just open to
Yeah.
whatever God has for me. If somebody is like, I want you to collab with me on this, or can you come be on my show and talk about this or whatever?
Yes.
Hey, whatever avenues and doors the Lord is choosing to open in Antoinette's life, I'm here for it. Let's go.
I love that. To close, what's one thing you like to leave with those tuning in?
Um, your voice matters. It doesn't matter if it's in work, in your community, in your church, with your family, on a job. If there's been some trauma that you've experienced, go put the work in and get the therapy. And then your
Yes.
voice matters. Speak your truth,
Yes. Yes.
share your truth, because you don't know how it can impact somebody.
Thank you. If there's anyone who wants to contact you, be it government officials, law enforcement, so on and so forth, that just needs a listening ear, or advice, suggestions, what have you, how do they find you?
Um, of course, I have an IG. It's just my personal, but it's Antoinette I am. And then my book, Becoming Me, the Reclamation, is on becomingme.us is my website.
Okay.
Um, Trying to think of other ways. My email, which is araines, at pacbell, pacbell.net, is
Okay.
also an avenue. And they can always reach out any of those ways and connect as they see fit.
Well, thank you so much, Antoinette, for sharing your story, for being a voice for those who are maybe still silenced, and being open to being a listening ear for those who are not yet ready to share their story with the world. Um, if you, again, want to get either of her books, she's shared that information. I will also share it for those of you who just want to be able to click on the link. Thank you for being episode number 2 of Full Circle
Thank you so
Moments.
much for having me.
Yes, I wish you so much grace and abundance in your journey in 2024 and beyond. And I know that we will be in touch.
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing some other something in the
Yes,
future.
it is for sure.
Thank you,
Yes.
Tanisha.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless. Take care.